Hello, this is Caleb Barney, local real estate agent in the greater Cleveland, Ohio metro market. And today I wanted to go over not only an article from Keeping Current Matters about why the spring market is a sweet spot if you're looking to sell, but also go over some local data here in the greater Cleveland area with some of the closest school districts that are near me. So basically, what Keeping Current Matters says is if you're wondering if now is a good time to sell your house, the short answer is it is, and here's why. First of all, the number of homes for sale and new listing activity continues to improve compared to last year. However, the inventory of homes for sale still has a long journey back to pre-pandemic levels. So that's the first thing that I'm actually going to stop us right here before we continue on, just so you can compare their generic statement here from Realtor.com and see how that compares to our specific market here in Northeast Ohio. So all the data that I ran here, it's for these specific school districts. So I live in Strongsville. I grew up in the Medina area. I went to Buckeye. So you'll see that basically I selected the cities or the school districts that are nearest to me. So Strongsville, of course, is where I am. North Royalton, over to the east, we have Berea, which is north of us, Brunswick, which is south of us, Columbia, which is west of us. I should have had Olmsted Falls in here as well, in Olmsted Township, but I did not include that in this data. And then, of course, I have my old stomping grounds at Buckeye, local schools, Highland schools, and then Medina schools as well. So that's what we're looking at. Some of the data was allowing me to go back to 2015, and then some data was not pulling correctly unless it was 2018 or newer. So that's what we were looking at there. So as far as the number of homes for sale and new listing activity. So we're going to go to active listings for sale, and you could see this allowed me to pull from back to January 2015. And you could see there's always going to be ebbs and flows of how many houses are currently available for sale and that are not under contract. So it goes up and down, up and down. That's part of the seasonality. But overall, you can see while it's not quite as low as we were in parts of 2021 and 2022, we're still very low overall for the active number of listings, especially when you compare it to a decade ago. So back in the day, you would see, 2015, there were basically between 1,300 and 1,600 homes listed for sale at any given time and in any given month. And typically the active listings would grow in the summertime because that's just when more people had their home listed for sale. Yes, there's more buyers looking, but there's also more people willing to sell their home in the summer. So that's why you see the active listings typically growing, particularly in May, June, and July. But depending on the season or depending on the year, sometimes it was June, July, August. So really, we have what I consider a 6-month window with the most activity starting in March and ending usually in September, or tailing off, I should say then. So when you're looking at 2024's numbers, and we'll compare this, I like to pull this one up, broken down, yes, year by year, but also showing the monthly breakdown, because then you could see how 2024 compares to some of the years prior. So more listings that are available in 2024 compared to, say, 2022, especially. It's when we were really hurting for inventory. But you could see it still is a little bit of a drop off from last year. because there are 257 listings that were active and still available for sale in January in those school districts that I have right here. And then there were 256 listings that were available for sale in February. That doesn't mean that only one house sold. It means that a bunch of houses sold, more houses were listed in February, and then basically the net difference was one house difference. But pretty much in line with what we saw in 2023 right here. But again, historically speaking, you could see 2020 was the last year in the 500s for basically any month. And that really ended in July. And then in 2021, we only had another bigger month in July. Other than that, we've been in the 200s and 300s and barely able to crack the 400s, which we did in July of 2022 and October of 2022. But nowhere near that since then, and nowhere near the levels that we were at from 2015 to 2017, really, where we are at 250 listings for sale compared to 1,300 or whatever the number that we're looking at. So we're basically at 20% of the amount of active listings that we were back then. And for all of the people who are calling for a housing crash, this is the reason why that's not going to happen. Housing crash is basically going to be determined by supply and demand. And even though home affordability has been drastically hurt with the rising interest rates and the still high home prices, you could see that when you lose 80% of the houses that are listed for sale, well, is demand shrinking by 80%? No, it's not. People are still looking to buy houses, and that's what's keeping those home prices elevated. So that's the number of active listings. When we go to the number of new listings, again, you have your peaks and valleys, just because there's a lot of seasonality. And again, the listing time period where most houses are going to be listed historically are going to be between April to August. Again, you could stretch that out a little bit and say March to September, when most sellers are going to be listing their home for sale. And that's, again, partly convenience for them. I'm sure if they have kids, they don't want to disrupt their school, schedule, everything like that, where they have to get up, leave in the middle of the day if they're working from home, or take the kids out to eat or something if they have showings in the evening. So and then make it back for your normal bedtime routine. So we typically see more listings occur in June and July, as you could see, dating from 2020 moving forward. We had the most listings in 2020 in June. July was just one new listing off from there. In July of 2021, same thing. In June of 2022, same thing. And then in June of 2023. So going back to the title of this article, the spring market is a sweet spot if you're looking to sell. Well, partly one of the reasons why it's a sweet spot is because you're also going to have less competition from other home sellers if you list sooner than them. There's still a lot of buyers that are out there looking for houses. So you could potentially, I don't want to say you would get lost in the shuffle if you're listing your house in June or July, but there is more competition when you do list in the summertime. So that's something to consider. Again, when we're looking at just the number of new listings this year compared to years past, you have 218 listings in January, 212 in February. That is basically the exact same number as 2023, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. very similar to 2022. And then, 2021, 2020, those numbers bump up a little bit, but still nowhere near what we were back 10 years ago in 2015, 2016, for example, when we had literally more than double February 2016 numbers compared to February 2024 numbers of new listings. So not a ton of competition if you are looking to sell right now. And then let me go back really quickly just to the months of inventory, because they do mention inventory of homes for sale still having a long journey back to pre-pandemic levels. That's absolutely true here. You could see, so months of inventory, just keep in mind, the rule of thumb is 4 to 6 months of inventory is going to be considered a quote-unquote balanced market. If you're at less than 4 months of inventory, that's when the sellers usually have an advantage because there's not enough supply and too much demand in that area. So they can oftentimes get multiple offers, or they can get much closer to their asking price, if not get above their asking price, which obviously has been pretty normal the past couple of years. But if you're looking at the months of inventory, same thing, we're at 1.34 months of inventory right now, 1.65 months of inventory in January, which is down from 2023 numbers. It's not quite as low, definitely not as low as the first half of 2022. If you'll remember, interest rates were still at 3.1% for the 30-year national average for a fixed rate mortgage back in January of 2022. And that just kept slowly increasing, throughout the year, and peaked actually in October of 2022. Ironically, interest rates peaked last year in October as well, the third week in October, but that really didn't do a ton to dent, to increase inventory or anything like that. But if you're looking at, 1.34 months of inventory compared to 2019 levels, even, we're not even close to that. So 2.5 times away from that. So inventory is rising, but it's still slow. Again, we just went over that here. It's technically rising from, the latter half of last year, but it has actually decreased year over year so far in our area here. And then based on how many homes are on the market, there are two big reasons why this spring is looking so good for sellers. Reason number one, thanks to an uptick in inventory last year, you've got more options as you search for your home. I just showed that's not actually the case here, but still, that there are houses that are being listed for sale, so maybe there's going to be that right one for you. But because there are still fewer homes for sale than there would normally be, that means your house should stand out and get a lot of attention from buyers too. So if you want to sell your house, this spring is the sweet spot. When you're ready, chat with a local real estate agent to get the ball rolling. The only thing that I wanted to show last here, just the current price per square foot ratio. And basically for the areas that we were looking at, those school districts, you can see how much home prices have increased. Now, again, we're not necessarily comparing the same homes, so take this with a little grain of salt, but you could see overall, out of the 25,000 listings, over 25,000 listings, that home prices have gone up and up and up over time, and generally that's going to be the case if you're buying in A or B class neighborhoods. Obviously, if you start getting into neighborhoods that have much higher crime, maybe poorer not necessarily financially, but poorer in their standards for school ratings and stuff like that, then your home prices may not go up quite as rapidly. But this is something that I think is always something you should think of when you're looking to buy, because even though when you're buying a home, you're not necessarily thinking of selling it, I always do try to consider, okay, well, say I have to sell your home in a couple of years, are you going to be happy with that return on your investment? And is that price going to be going up? Or do I think it's going to be stagnant or even go down? So again, the areas that I'm looking at here definitely are appreciating markets. And that being said, I do serve all of Northeast Ohio. So if you have any questions about your specific market, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to help.